Hey guys, so welcome to Walletwise Wednesdays for our Clever, and my name is Nicolette Mashile, and today we're going to be talking about the emergency account and why it's important for you to save within your emergency account. Now, if you are still not convinced as to why you should have an emergency account, I do hope that nothing financially obligating happens to you in the next couple forever, because that's the thing when it comes to emergencies. It's not something that you plan for, but it can happen at any time. And we've got this thing in the African culture where we say if you don't have medical aid, you never get sick. The moment you get medical aid, you are sick all the time. For me, it's been the other way around when it comes to financial emergencies. I just seem to have less stress when it comes to financial emergencies because I've managed to maintain an emergency account. But, and this is a very big but, what constitute as your emergency account? And I think the other thing to just remember also why an emergency account is very important is because it will stop you from taking up any undue, unplanned, and usually very expensive credit. What do I mean by that? Generally, what happens is that somebody unfortunately has an unfortunate event that does need a financial response. For instance, perhaps maybe your garage door falls like mine, or your phone slips out of your hand and falls flat on its screen, and now you've got to replace the screen, and replacing a screen is like 2,500 Rand, and you don't have that money in your savings. You've got to find the money some way. So what people generally do is they will revert or resort to expensive credit, and that is things like overdrafts, credit cards, personal loans, or temporary loans, or revolving loans, or also go to those short-term loan providers, you know, those ones where you just sit with your computer and it's just between you and your God and you start asking for money. Yeah. So it's important for you to maintain an emergency account. But as I said, how much money should you actually maintain in your emergency account? Because for some of us, our emergency savings are part of the budget. So we put money in every single month. But at what point do you stop and say, whoa, I've put in way too much money into an account that is most probably not the highest interest bearing account? And let me tell you why emergency accounts generally will not attract the highest interest. It is because you want them to be available when you want them. So for instance, something like a 32-day notice account is not really going to work out for you as an emergency account, because when an emergency happens, you want to be able to financially respond now, right? And actually be able to pay for it. But with a 32-day account, you now need to put in 32-day notice, or you've got to take up a penalty, which then defeats the entire purpose of having an emergency account. So you do need to have an account that is easily accessible and always liquid. And generally what financial institutions do is that those type of accounts, they will generally give you very, very really sad interest rates. That is why I always ask this question of how much is too much in an emergency account? And that is what brings me to my next point. You've got to have a number. Now, a lot of these clever people say you've got to have between 3 to 12 months worth of your income in your emergency account. Now, this is just a guiding principle. It is not the rule of thumb. It is not written in the stars. It is not part of the 10 commandments. So actually, you are in charge and in control of your own emergency account, and you can decide how much money you would like to have in your emergency account. And once you get to that point, then really, do you really need to keep funding this emergency account, or do you just need to actually maintain the emergency account and rather find better places to be able to save your money so that you can accrue some decent interest? Now, which places are not amazing for emergency account? I've already mentioned a 32-day account. That is not a good account for an emergency account. I don't care what you say or who you are, but a 32-day account, any notice type of account is very difficult. 7-day notice account or 48-hour notice account, we can still make concessions for, because what those type of accounts then do is that they allow you to actually stop and think and assess whether this thing is an emergency or not. Because generally we're human beings and we've got human error. So most of us, when something happens, we deem to think everything is an emergency, especially when we're in panic mode, right? We think that everything needs a financial response, and sometimes certain things do not need financial responses. You are not Rambo, you are not Olivia Pope, you are definitely not Superman or Batman or whatever, Gininzi, okay? You don't have to respond immediately to all financial emergencies, unless, of course, it really is an emergency. And you probably, by now, because you're an adult, know what constitutes as an emergency and what does not constitute an emergency. And generally, the rule of thumb is that it needs to be an emergency that you feel is an emergency and not somebody else, right? I always talk about how my mother personally panics about a lot of things. In as much as she doesn't want me to pay for anything, because she's always saying, oh, I'm putting pressure on you, but I know my mother panics. So half of the time, before I actually ask if it's an emergency, I will call my father and say, is it really an emergency, right? And that's really generally how it works. She's a mother, so obviously she wants everything to be perfect at all times. So again, what account is not great to be an emergency account? Take, for instance, your tax-free savings account. It has the name savings, so a lot of people try to use it as an emergency savings account. It really is not, and you beat and you defeat the purpose of your tax-free savings account if you use it as an emergency account. Remember that any account that has a powerful compounding effect where you can actually make additional money from allowing your account to earn compound interest should not be disturbed. Generally, those types of accounts are for long term, and so is a tax-free savings account. It is a long-term account, but over and above it being a long-term account and you not wanting to disturb the compounding effect is the fact that the tax-free account has quite a number of limitations on it. And one of the main limitations is the fact that you can only put up to 33,000 Rand every single year into your tax-free account. And once you've reached that limit, you can't withdraw and think you can replace. No, my friend, once you withdraw, you've got to wait for the next financial year. And most of us didn't start our tax-free accounts on the 1st of January. So keeping up just with when your financial year starts and ends can sometimes be difficult. So it's important for you not to use the tax-free account as your emergency account. But what is a great place to use as an emergency account? Personally, for me, I use my bond account. I've got what is called an access bond account. And basically what I do is that I put my money into my access bond account. So two things happen. Yes, my money might not be earning any interest, which I am okay, because let's be honest. Let's quickly look at the situation. The reality is that I pay an interest rate of almost 12, lies, wow. I pay an interest rate of almost 10% on my bond account, right? Now, where am I going to find an easily accessible account in this country that gives me 10% back as an interest rate? I'll wait. Probably no account, right? So if I do it the other way around, remember what Albert Einstein said, compound interest is what? The eighth wonder of the world. Those who understand it will earn it, and those who do not understand it will pay it. So generally, on a home loan, you're paying the compound interest. But if you lower the amount that you actually owe, you then pay less. So I take my money and I put it in my access bond account because I immediately get 10% back as interest that I'm not charged. I mean, really? But you'll find this all in my book. Don't worry, I got you guys. But anyway, if you do not have an access bond account, maybe perhaps that's when you need to start looking at really minimizing that amount of money that is your emergency account, as opposed to having these huge quantities of money sitting in an account that really sometimes barely scrapes beating inflation and all the fees that you got to pay the bank. So yeah, I think that's. Then last but not least, so that I don't make this video too long because I still want you to stay wallet wise, is looking at other alternatives that really do help you in terms of your emergencies. So things like having tire insurance. So if your tire bursts, you've got insurance. If you got phone insurance, if your screen breaks, you can get it fixed by the insurance. I know the claim sometimes takes a little bit long. For instance, even with credit insurance, it takes long. You might be retrenched this month and then they say to you the claim will pay in 60 days. Those are the things that you got to cover yourself for. So then what happens? Maybe you get an emergency account savings worth a month, 2 months only, because you know you've got credit insurance, and then you know you've got things like tire show, you know you've got like whatever types of insurance. You can even look at a product like income protection. If you get retrenched, your income protection kind of steps in and helps you pay for certain things. So I don't know, maybe relook at why it's important for you to have an emergency account and rather structure your emergency account in such a way that it is money savvy, it is clever, it is wallet wise. Because this is Walletwise for our clever.